Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar of arbitration and the metaverse. We're very pleased to have you here with us. I am Pablo del Castillo. I'm partner at Andersen in Mexico. And today we have a great event. We have a great team who's willing to share their experience and their thoughts with us. But first of all, we have Karen Trujillo from Colegio de Corredores Públicos del Estado de Jalisco, who is going to give you some initial words. Please, Karen.
President of the Colegio de Corredores is having trouble to join us, but she asked me if I could welcome you all. We are very pleased to collaborate with Andersen, and we don't want to take a lot of time from the from our from this event, so I give you the word, Pablo.
Thank you very much, Karen, and welcome again to all of you. We have 3 colleagues from Andersen. 2 of them are from Poland. We have Tomasz Rokos. We have also Jarek Kolsowski. And also we have from Italy, Tatiana Karavanova. Welcome to you all. Thank you for assisting and sharing your experience with us. Okay, today we're going to start by sharing with you some initial thoughts from Thomas, and afterwards we're going to speak about our main issues from today's webinar. So Thomas, thank you very much. Nice to meet you again. And Thomas is partner at Poland for Andersen. He has a lot of experience in litigation and arbitration, especially his areas of specialization are public-private partnership and concessions, competition and antitrust law, public procurement, environmental protection, among others. So welcome, Thomas, and please go on.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Pablo, thank you very much for opportunity to present the European Litigation and Arbitration Service Line during this webinar. All of speakers, myself, Tatiana, and Jarosław are member of the Litigation and Arbitration Service Line Europe. I'm also the coordinator of this service line. I'm attorney at law and PhD in law. Litigation and Arbitration Service Line was created and growing to support our European clients in dispute before the European courts. I would like underline before the European State Court, because only the local lawyer knows the local proceedings, which means that we should create network of lawyers to support our medium and large size clients who provide their activity in many European countries. It's very important that we should divide the arbitration and litigation, because Europe could be treated by America or China or other part of the world as the one country, but we work in many jurisdictions. It's very important that lawyers from France or Poland are not familiar with German law. And if we have the clients which acting as network of plans of agency, we should cooperate and we should create the network of lawyers which are familiar with many jurisdictions. It's not only civil clients, civil courts, it's the administrative also, administrative authority. For example, I am a specialist in public procurement law, and I represent the client before the public procurement tribunal. From the beginning of dispute until the resolution, we help our client to make a decision. We prepare the strategy, which should be prepared for each situation and for each kind of client. Lawyers from our service line litigation arbitration are familiar with such matters like engineering, construction, banking, insurance, M&A transaction, corporate and shareholder disputes. The reason that we create such service line is the consequence of this is preparing the library of experience, credential, knowledge of requirements of our clients. And maybe main activity it's in the commercial litigation, corporate disputes, merger and acquisition disputes, intellectual property disputes, real estate, environmental proceedings. I'm really familiar with environmental proceedings because each client could start investment in Poland should start from the environmental proceedings, which could be the source of disputes. Arbitration it's a different create a different situation because arbitration, particularly international arbitration, has cross-border character, which means that dispute arising multiple country can be solved by the single arbitral tribunal. Of course, very important is binding arbitration clause and appropriate proceedings and court which is dedicated to the case. For example, I'm familiar with the FIDIC disputes. We provide many disputes under the FIDIC, it's the construction general condition. And I have very good experience with provide this matter before the arbitration court. But what is the problem? That we should be sure that we indicate proper court and proper proceeding in our arbitration clause. Today we try discuss, analyze arbitration in Metaverse. I'm absolutely sure that nobody is expert in Metaverse, particularly disputes in Metaverse. Tatiana, Jarek start very difficult topic because virtual reality it's something which we learn, and I don't know how many lawyers in Europe or Latin America has experience with virtual reality and disputes in virtual reality. I'm sure that it's the process, and thank you once more that we could participate in this meeting, because I'm absolutely sure that it's the first meeting, and many times we try to repeat and of course develop this matter, because in Europe and maybe in other continents it could be very, very useful for lawyers and for our clients. Once more, I would like to recommend our litigation arbitration service line, the lawyers from many jurisdictions in Europe, and I think that cooperation between the lawyers from Latin America and Europe could be useful, particularly in virtual reality. Tatiana, floor is yours. Please continue this topic.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you, Pablo,
Tatiana,
for
just
changing.
just a
Yeah.
second, Tatiana, just for everyone to know that if you want to or you have some questions for our presenters, please put them on writing, and we will be reviewing it. So at the end of Tatiana's and Jarek's exposition, we're going to try to provide you some answers to your questions.
And
Thank
only
you.
one issue. Brochure of litigation and arbitration service line is available on our website, and if someone is interested in to receive such brochure, of course, we will send to your email address. Thank you, Tatiana, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're connecting from. And thank you very much, Pablo, for this opportunity to participate in this webinar and to talk on this very fascinating and interesting topic. So I'll try to give the general overview of the metaverse and interaction and the metaverse, and then we'll see the main areas of disputes. And we're all dispute lawyers, and this is what we're dealing with. We'll see the main areas of disputes connected to the metaverse, and see the main legal issues of such disputes. So let's start from the notions. And even though the metaverse is one of the most talked about concepts in the modern technology, it still has no clear definition, but we can describe it as an immersive and constant virtual 3D world where people can interact by means of an avatar to carry out a wide range of activities. And such activities can range from leisure and gaming to professional and commercial interaction, financial transaction, and even health interventions such as surgeries. So the most popular practical applications of the metaverse are computer games, social media platforms, virtual conferences, virtual events, virtual workplaces. Of course, e-commerce with virtual shopping malls, with possibility to acquire virtual items, healthcare and medicine, and of course, digital assets. So considering this application, the metaverse will open up a range of opportunities, but also a number of risks. And a flaw for interpretation is it creates a new phenomena, and always when we're dealing with something new, there is a flaw for such interpretations. So business in the metaverse is expected to be dependent largely on cryptocurrencies and non-fungible tokens, raising issues of ownership and misuse. Furthermore, the huge volume of data used in the metaverse raises a number of data protection and cybersecurity issues. Let's just think about how to collect users' consents, or how to protect avatars against identity theft. There is also considerable scope for a wide range of illegal and harmful behavior, for illegal inside of the metaverse environment. And this takes it essential to consider how to attribute responsibility for such illegal and harmful practices or misleading advertising in the metaverse. And one of other fundamental question is how can we protect the intellectual property rights in the metaverse? Now, having all this in mind, basically what we need to know, the basic things we need to know about the metaverse, what the metaverse is doing is creating an electronic system, a digital platform when individuals can interact with each other in this new virtual way, which is actually not that new because we know all the concept of the video games, of the gaming with the access, with online access and the social networks, but it does something more. And what is new in the possibility is the possibility of interaction through the representation in the form of a digital avatar created in the metaverse. Now, let's see the main features of such interaction, and if yes, let's see the main features of interaction, and starting going into the discussion, let's see what the subject of such interaction, which is the main topic of this relationship created inside of the metaverse. And the question arises from the particularity I have just mentioned. The users of the metaverse platform interact through their digital avatars, so there is an issue of identity. How can we identify the persons who are in the metaverse? What is the nation of the legal entity in the metaverse? All of these primary questions we need to understand how we define this concept before we are moving forward, because as lawyers, we need to understand who is entering into relationships with whom, relationships, of course, that are legally relevant, who is violated whose rights, and in the end of the day, who is suing whom. Meanwhile, in the real world, I can see if I'm dealing with the physical person, if I'm dealing with the natural person, or with legal entity. And my legislation, local legislation, provide me with some provision how to identify with the criteria of identification of the legal person and of a physical person. Meanwhile, all this concept in the metaverse, it's something different. Then we have a privacy issue, because people participate in the metaverse through avatars using special equipment, such as virtual reality headsets or similar devices, enabling this immersive experience. This entails the collection of massive amounts of data, including biometric data and data on the emotional and psychological response of users. All this represents sensitive personal data under the data protection regulation applicable in the given state. At least in the European GDPR, we have the general data protection regulation, according to which all this kind of data I just mentioned fall with the definition of the sensitive data and should be treated as such. And I'm sure in Mexico and other countries there are similar data protection regulation which classified this data in a similar way. And this required the special attention to the explicit user consent for each purpose for which the data is used. So one of the challenges of the metaverse is to find a way to make the use of enabling devices privacy safe from one hand and compliant with the data protection regulation, and from the other hand, do this without compromising the use of such devices too much. And of course, there is also an issue of simulation of identity, because acting in the metaverse means that you have a control over your avatar. But what happens if someone takes the control over your avatar? The avatar are accessible for those who have a special key, who have this special code identifying the user with its digital avatar. And while in the real world, the identification of person has some very clear criteria like fingerprints, biometrics, and some other criteria. In the metaverse, all these classical concepts are just not applicable. So what happened next? Once we are in the metaverse, does this interaction mean that we are entering into a contract, or it is something different from a contract, in like a legal reality, some legal phenomena which is still needs to be regulated by a legislator? But if it is a contract or even other different reality, who are the parties of this, let's say, contract or agreement? Other users, owners of the platform, services providers in the metaverse. Number of questions here. Then the place and timing of the interaction. The virtual place can be considered a territorial extension of a country from the one hand, and from the other hand, it can also be considered virtual space as an alternative, a national space, which is something different with no territorial belonging to a certain state. And some consideration should also be done regarding the timing, because in the normal life and in the normal offline reality, we have pretty clear concept of time. We can we have pretty clear perception of time, And we have clear definition of timing, deadlines, and all connected to the timing legal consequences described, provided by our local legislation. In the meantime, in the metaverse, this concept can be different because timing perception in the metaverse can be different. It also can be reversible in some cases. So you can go back in the time, something which is in real world completely impossible. So the classical time geographical framework may not be applicable in the individual's activity in the metaverse. And we have to admit the limitation of the limits of the classical time geographical framework, which is not able to deal with the virtual activities and the interactions. And this has direct repercussions on the legal issues, in particular with the law applicable to such relations. If the virtual place is a territorial extension of a country, everything is more or less clear. You just need to apply the law of this certain country. But what happens if the space are not geographically belonging to any states? This is the question. Now let's see the ways of interaction. It's also something different to the interaction in the normal world, because here we're dealing with the smart contracts and some other forms like digital assets, cryptocurrency, NFTs, and so on. As to the smart contracts, this is something new, a new phenomena. It is different from the classical contracts negotiated by the lawyers and then signed by the parties. A smart contract is a kind of self-executing contract, executing contract with the terms of the agreement between the parties being directly written in the lines of code. So we have the consequences of the sequence of the codes in the code and the arrangement agreements contained in the code exist across a blockchain network. The code controls the execution, and the transaction can be trackable, and it is irreversible. So smart contract permit transaction and agreements to be carried out among anonymous parties without the need of central authority, without the need of legal system, and without the need of external enforcement mechanism. As to the digital assets, I think it's quite clear the digital assets in general is anything that is created and stored digitally, that is identifiable, and that provides for a value or has a value. And of course, the metaverse is a space of circulation of digital assets. Next slide, please. Okay, from now on, I will try to slow down because now we are in the area of disputes, and we are getting closer to the main topic of our discussion. Of course, all this interaction in the metaverse cannot but create disputes from the interaction between users and the digital platform owners and so on. And now we'll see the main areas of disputes, of possible dispute that have been already verified and what we're expecting to in the nearest future. And first of all, dispute about the access to the metaverse platform. We already discussed the identity issues and the question of control over the avatar integrity, risk of identity theft, avatar duplication, and misuse. So all this creates the floor for the violation, the floor for the future disputes. Then illegal practices in misleading advertising. Illegal practices also have given rise to legal issues, to disputes. And with regards to the advertising strategy, we need to consider that there is a risk of consumer manipulation, given the psychological effects of this immersive technology, of this immersive experience. The impact on the consumer of advertising practice in the metaverse is still unclear. There's still something being under the research, and maybe in the nearest future we'll have some results of such research in order to understand if the perception of the possibility of consumer manipulation is higher or lower, or just the same in the metaverse as in the offline world, in the normal reality. Then IP rights protection, of course, intellectual property enforcement is a challenge in the metaverse environment. And this is because it is more difficult to identify the provider that can take down infringement content, since metaverse content is distributed and replaced across decentralized networks. Then we have the huge area of dispute from the ownership of digital assets in the metaverse. The legal and regulatory frameworks surrounding the NFTs, non-fungible tokens, is still under development. The extent to which the NFTs create an ownership right is still very much discussed. Is it governed by contract law, or should it be governed by property law? Unclear. Plus, private metaverse platform may be contractually given a great deal of control over some key aspects of digital asset in the metaverse environment. So legal issues may rise regarding proper verification of the ownership. And misuse of the NFTs. We all know that NFTs can be misused in various ways. Fraudulent acts, including hacking to gain unlawful access to the digital wallets, storing NFTs, and some other cryptocurrency, some other crypto assets. So all this can create the huge floor for the violations, and it is a possible area of future disputes. I will not discover much about the fintech investment, virtual land, and buildings rent and sell. Pretty much it's all included in the interaction through the digital assets and the smart contracts, which we have just already discussed. And with that, I will pass the floor to Pablo and Jarek. And Jarek will bring some lights to the legal issues related to these areas of disputes I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Sorry, because I didn't provide the corresponding presentation of yourself. Tatiana Karavanova is associate in our Milan office at Andersen. She has a law degree in Russia, but also in Italy. So she has both legal systems approaches. She has a lot of experience with corporate clients and also arbitration. So thank you very much, Tatiana, for sharing us your thoughts and your experience today. And
thank you,
now
Pablo, for your kind presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are going to pass to Jarek. So Jarek, thank you very much for joining us today. I think
thank you.
Jarek would rather have his presentation. Jarek, I would like just to provide a few words. Just a second. Okay, Jarek is also a partner of Andersen in Poland. Jarek has a lot of experience also in arbitration and especially in investment arbitration. And he has also specialized in industries like energy industry. So Jarek, please welcome once again and go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this introduction, Pablo. Welcome all. Let me just start the presentation. I hope you all see it. Do you? Pablo, is it visible?
Yes, we can see it.
If you can put it in the way
In the
in the
presentation
presentation
mode?
way, yeah, it would be better.
I am. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, welcome everybody. I would like to touch on a bit of just the surface, probably, of topics and problems that can arise from dispute that could arise in the metaverse. Some of my remarks will probably overlap with what Tatiana has said, but I will try to approach them from the procedural point of view and from what as we all as dispute resolution lawyers might face when we ask to try to advise a client on such a dispute. So without further ado, I would like to begin with the most basic, I'd say, issue of an arbitration agreement, or any other agreement for that matter, which could form a basis for a dispute resolution in metaverse. The only multinational agreement that actually covers the topic is the 1958 New York Convention on the recognition and enforcement of arbitral awards. And judging just from the date of it, it's a bit outdated and probably not fit for the challenges and the developments that we face today, especially in the virtual world. As you can see here on the slide, the first issue that every lawyer will be facing is the definition of an arbitration agreement. The convention, and it's widely recognized in most of the countries in the world, and the definitions are multiplied and copied into domestic legal systems. The definition is in Article 2, Section 2 of the convention, and it says that it should be in writing, but the agreement in writing shall include an arbitral clause in a contract or an arbitration agreement signed by the parties or contained in an exchange of letters or telegrams. Obviously, no one uses telegrams anymore, but we can all safely agree that any exchange of communication via email with electronic signatures will definitely constitute a valid arbitration agreement. However, as we are dealing with a metaverse situation, that is not as simple as that, because as Tatiana said a minute ago, people meet in the metaverse, meet in a virtual reality, and they simply exchange goods, exchange services, and hardly ever do they, if at all, they sign anything in whatever form, or they don't even exchange communication via email. They sometimes, or maybe most of the time, they don't even know who they are really dealing with, and this is probably the first biggest problem that needs to be resolved. And I'm not sure it can be resolved by lawyers in a particular dispute. It probably should be resolved on a national or even international level, so that we don't have that issue. But having that in mind, when we advise clients, we must start with this. If any of us has a client who intends to enter metaverse and trade in metaverse and conclude a number of agreements of high substantial value, then obviously this topic should be the first to highlight, to be highlighted, because if it's not resolved at the beginning, then once the dispute is arisen, it might be a bit too late. Now let's jump to a bit of more specific issues that actually show how important it is to have this arbitration agreement or any other agreement regarding dispute resolution, might be mediation, whatever, any ADR clause of whatever sort. Tatiana spoke about avatars and all the issues that are connected with those. And let me give you an example. I'm not going to repeat what Tatiana said about it, but let me give you an example. Me myself, I'm a poker player, for example, and there's a lot of platforms, internet platforms, where people play poker. It doesn't have to be poker. It might be trade platforms, whatever. But the issues are really the same. When someone wants to cheat on a platform like that, they use various of techniques that actually hide their identity, which is the most important thing when you enter into an agreement, any legal relationship, because you have to know who is the other party to that relationship. And one of those is multi-accounting. People enter a platform, whatever platform that might be. I'm just using the terms from the poker world because that's what I'm really familiar with. But it really it applies to every other metaverse that you could imagine. Once you enter a metaverse, you create an account, obviously. This way or another, you create your avatar, you create your account. There are people who create multiple accounts, and they hide behind those accounts and use them to create advantage over other participants, other members of the community. Just a quick example that actually came to my mind while Tatiana was giving her presentation. Let's imagine a person who buys an NFT or a number of NFTs representing pieces of art. And let's assume that when that person buys them, the value of those is really low. But using multiple accounts, that person can trade this NFT actually between himself. He can sell to himself, he can buy from himself. But by doing that, he actually raises the price of the NFT, which is obviously a fraud. He's creating he's manipulating the market. He's creating the value of the NFT and then sells it to a legitimate buyer who didn't know that the turnover of that NFT was actually artificial, because it was one and the same person trading with himself, him or herself. So this is one of the issues, one of the problems that the identity, a hidden identity, the secrecy of identity in metaverse creates. Another example is ghosting. Actually, sometimes people, and Tatiana spoke of it as well. People pretend to be someone else. You don't know who you're really buying from. You don't know who is the service provider, and ghosting is also very, very dangerous. It's not that people often try to hide, try to pretend that they're better than they are. Actually, it might be the other way around, that they may pretend that they are consumers or amateurs, and in fact they are professionals, and they can sell or provide services as amateurs, as someone who is not familiar with the business, just to avoid liability for it. What kind of disputes we can encounter in the metaverse? Obviously, disputes between platform users and the platforms themselves, the providers. This might be fairly easy, I'd say, because if you enter a legitimate platform and it's with good reputation and fairly well regulated, then probably that platform has some rules you have to accept before entering, before creating the account. And in most cases, those rules provide for some kind of dispute resolution mechanism. It can't cover everything, obviously, but this might be easier than in the other possible scenario, which is a dispute between users. Now, this all comes under the issue of identity, because in order to sue somebody, you have to know who that person is. So I think that at this point, without any specific regulation in whatever country that I know of, or not to mention the world, it would be probably smart to advise clients that before they enter into any contract, they need to identify their counterparty. It might be a bit against the philosophy of metaverse, and it's, I would say, idealistic freedom concept, but well, there we are. I mean, you can be idealistic and you can think about freedom and your right to be anonymous, as long as it doesn't cost you money. But when it does, you quickly forget about it. So when big money is involved, identity is key in terms of dispute resolution as well. Now, last thing I would like to touch base on is applicable law. There is no global regulation for that. Actually, apart from the EU, actually I don't know any other group of countries that regulate it internationally. There are bilateral agreements between certain countries that touch some of those aspects. There are obviously international agreements regarding certain types of contracts or legal relationships, but there is no general regulation on on private international law. In most cases, this is regulated in the domestic legal regimes, country by country, and maybe they don't differ that much from each other, because there is a general consensus, I believe, between international private lawyers on how to regulate things, but details can be really important when it comes to dispute resolution. In metaverse, as in real world, you might have disputes which are based on torts and contracts. And the problem is that in metaverse, there may be some peculiarities. There may be some torts or types of contracts, like smart contracts, which do not exist in real world. But at the end of the day, the mechanism is pretty much the same. However, the question of place, the question of identity, they all create particular problems which do not exist or hardly ever exist in the real world. Now, if you have a tort committed, like a fraud, simple fraud, in the metaverse, issues like the place of the act can come up really quickly, and you really don't know which law should be applicable to that. The rule of thumb is that it should be the law of the place where the act was committed. But to identify that place, that's a totally different issue. That's a very different animal. And as Tatiana said before, it might be one of the biggest problems in dispute resolution to actually identify that place. It may be the server, it may be the access point, it may be the delivery point, it may be something else. It might be in a country, it may be outside of a country, it may be God knows where. And it's really really difficult. Therefore, I think another piece of advice that we might give our clients is to really carefully choose the platforms that they use. The more specific are the rules of that platform, the more regulated it is, probably the safer it is. And probably we could, or our clients could avoid a lot of problems if the platforms they use were more regulated. Same thing goes with contracts. I actually indicated that in terms of contracts, the applicable law in the EU, for example, is regulated by the Rome I regulation. The torts, non-contractual relationships, are regulated by Rome II regulation. But these are actually these are exceptions. These are exceptions which are only applicable in the EU or for the EU countries. And I don't know any other regulations like that, as I said before. And even those, they do not, and I repeat, they do not deal with metaverse or any virtual reality in particular. They don't contain any specific provisions which would apply to what we are talking about today. So even though they're pretty recent, and they're much newer there than the newer conventions, still they are outdated if we're talking about something like metaverse. When we come to contracts and contract-based disputes, again, there's a difference if we're talking about disputes between consumers, between professionals, or between professionals and consumers. Different rules apply to those, and those issues might come up in an unregulated metaverse environment. There's another issue that should be taken into account, and this actually this is a well-known concept worldwide, but it's probably better defined in the EU law. Is the overriding mandatory provisions, or provisions which cannot be derogated from by agreement. There are legal relationships which have different characteristics, and they cannot be resolved by means of arbitration, by means of amicable dispute resolution method, just like that, because the law actually prohibits us from it. And there are overriding mandatory provisions are like public policies, personal status, real estate, but sometimes corporate law issues. I'll give you an example from Polish law, for example. If you buy and sell shares in a private company, private joint stock company, could you sell shares in a Polish company under, I don't know, a Mexican sale agreement? You could. There's no problem with it. Could you have this agreement governed by Italian law? Of course you could. That's not a problem. However, there's a provision in Polish law which says that the shares are only transferred where there is an entry made in the register of the company, which is run by a brokerage house. Even though it's a private company, you have to have your shares registered in that brokerage house, and in a virtual, actually, that's funny, but in a virtual register, and you can enter into whatever number of agreements you like, but as long as you don't register that sale in the register, the shares don't change their owner. And that's a provision, that's a corporate law provision, which you could call an overriding mandatory provision. No matter what the law for the contract, governing the contract is, that is an overriding mandatory provision. I do believe that contracts like purchase and sale of shares, they do happen in Metaverse, they can happen in Metaverse, and all those issues need to be taken into account. There are some types of legal relationships which have different arbitrability, for example. And those are relationships that can also be entered into in Metaverse, like employment contracts. I can easily imagine that one can hire his employee in the Metaverse, not even knowing where that person is located. Maybe it's a IT specialist living in Indonesia but working in Germany, or something of that sort, and you enter into an employment contract with him. You might enter into such a contract in the Metaverse. I don't see any obstacle in doing that. However, you have to know that in some countries, Poland is the best example for it, you can subject the dispute to arbitration, an employment dispute to arbitration, but only after that dispute has arisen, not before. You cannot have a valid arbitration agreement, arbitration clause in an employment contract. It can only be subjected to arbitration after it has arisen. So there's a lot of issues, there's a lot of problems that are probably, I would say, multiplied by the metaverse. They're not new, they're not non-existent in the real world, but they're certainly multiplied and exaggerated by the peculiarities of metaverse. And I think, and that should be the bottom line of this webinar. Whenever we advise clients who intend to enter metaverse, we have to highlight those problems and tell them that even though they might have been familiar with them in the real world, there might be much more serious in the metaverse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jarek. Very interesting. And of course, I can see, at least it's clear for me that the how people are already interacting in metaverse will provide very challenging legal topics or legal issues to resolve. I mean, if today we have a very complex situations to resolve for the online conflict disputes, I think with metaverse or through metaverse would be more challenging, right? So thank you very much to the three of you. I would like to provide some minutes to have questions from the participants. I think maybe it's not possible to use the chat, but you can use the raise hand button, so you can ask some questions to our presenters. But I already received some questions personally, and I would like to ask you the same question to Jarek and Tatiana, and is if you see in the future that arbitration in the metaverse would be very different or substantially different from how is arbitration as today.
Tatiana, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, this is a very interesting question. And first of all, we need to understand what we're talking about here. Are we talking about arbitrating a normal life dispute in the metaverse, or we are arbitrating the metaverse related dispute? And these are two different things. And if we're talking about the arbitrating in the metaverse, the real life disputes, first of all, I think the technology is not quite there yet. We are just get used to the remote hearings after the pandemics. And if you remember, in the beginning of pandemics, these virtual hearings, remote hearings raised a number of questions on the right of the presenting case in person. There were some interpretation in the problem with the translation of the ICC arbitration rules in different languages, some of which were provided for the literal translation in the present case in person in the personal hearings, and it raised a numbers of questions. Not talking, this is only about remote hearings, and now in the metaverse, which is completely different reality, which is way more this is an immersion in the virtual reality or augmented reality, which is quite different. I think the technology is not quite yet there. And this is the first consideration. And another consideration, I think it all depends what are we going to do in this arbitration of real dispute in the metaverse, because we still have the issues of the body language, which just or only our body languages. So if we are talking about examination of the witness in the metaverse through the digital avatars, and with digital avatars, I can be a chair or a car or a Statue of Liberty, whatever it can be. So I think it's not a good idea for the cross-examination, for the direct examination, because it's these two exercises especially are very linked to the human body language, which is different from what we are facing in the metaverse. And as to the other possibility of the metaverse, if you want just to exchange the submissions or the documents, you basically don't need hearings for that. So I still a little skeptical about conducting hearings in the metaverse regarding the real life dispute, which can be different for the disputes related to the metaverse dispute. And here we have also the issues, maybe Jarek, something we didn't discuss, enforceability of the disputes related to the metaverse decided in the metaverse, and how can be it enforced in the real life. So this is my thoughts. Jarek, what do you think?
Can I in ad vocem said something? I have one experience with dispute between information platform and journalists on this information platform and our client. And it was not arbitration, but it was a state court dispute. But problem was with the mentality of judge. Is the great and huge problem, because it was a very old-fashioned judge, and please believe me, she totally did not understand the issue and the tools which was used in infringement by the journalist. And I think that, first of all, we should change our approach to the metaverse dispute. But first of all, we should prepare the new generation judge, which will be very familiar with virtual reality, and they should feel the difference between reality and virtual reality, and only they could be judged in such disputes. It's from my side. It's all ad vocem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Actually, it's a very good observation, also because this somehow proves that arbitration actually can be a very good solution for the dispute connecting to the metaverse, because arbitration permits you to choose the arbitrators who have special skills, arbitrators who are well prepared and familiar with the technologies and so on. I think this is one of the features of the arbitration, which makes it suitable for the metaverse related disputes.
Well, actually, I do agree with everything Tatiana said, but really responding to the question very shortly, I would say that the arbitration regarding metaverse will not, and I don't think how can it, will not differ much to what it looks like in the real life, because at the end of the day, behind those avatars, behind those blockchain technologies, behind those virtual realities, there are real people, and they have their real problems, and they have their real lives and real money. So even if someone is a good example is with this crypto crash that actually the world faced over the last 6 or 8 months. You might think, yeah, that's a virtual currency. No one really knows what it is. No one really understands how it works, apart from those miners who create it. But at the end of the day, when the market crashed, when it plunged, you could see a lot of offers of, for example, expensive watches in the market, because it turned out that those people who didn't understand what cryptocurrency was, they bought it, they used it, and they bought real stuff, tangible items for that cryptocurrency. and they lost real money at the end of the day. In Vietnam, for example, as I know, there are communities which suffer from this cryptocurrency crisis, and there are people who commit suicide because they lost real money, because it wasn't virtual at the end of the day. They are not virtual, and if they are not virtual and their problems are not virtual, the arbitration won't be virtual at all. It will be. Actually, Tatiana made a good point, and I wanted to make it myself, but she was first. That we actually overcame the problem with virtual hearings because of the pandemic. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we all got used to virtual hearings. There are different methods of taking care of the transparency and the honesty of witness examination, for example. You can send someone to look over the witness. You can ask the witness to show the room in which he's sitting, and so on and so forth, so that there is no one coercing the witness, so there is no one influencing his testimony, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think that is as far as we will go. I don't think that there is any possibility, because people won't allow it. The parties won't allow it. I don't think there is a possibility of for example, a virtual arbitrary tribunal where there are only avatars, as Tatiana suggested, that there may be a car pretending to be a chairman of the arbitrary tribunal. I don't think that's going to be the case. At the end of the day, there are real people behind those avatars, and as long as there are real people, not artificial intelligence, there are going to be real dispute and real arbitrations.
But the judge, it could be supported by artificial intelligence in future. Maybe it is.
That's a different topic. That's a different topic. We all can.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question from the participants. Each one of you can answer if you want. And is this, even though it's not similar to e-commerce, the big issue is how to identify parties inside the metaverse. And this participant is asking if it could be possible to create an international organization in charge of certifying identities of the persons in the metaverse. Do you think that would be a possible solution?
Well, yes, actually, it is one of the solution that was proposed to solve the problem of identity. But of course, this solution is not perfect neither, because in this case, we have another problem. We have a problem of accumulation of big data in just one authority in charge with the identification of the person behind the avatars, and this makes the risk of cyber attacks even higher. That is the main issue.
I think that the only possible international regulation is to create mechanism on how to do it, how to identify people, how to identify participants in the metaverse, and maybe make, simply force the metaverse platform providers to implement such mechanisms which would allow people to be identified in the event of a dispute. Maybe not from the beginning, but at least in the event of a dispute. However, I am a bit skeptical about the future of it. It's not going to happen quickly because, and especially on an international level, because as we all know, international agreements are really hard to create, and to have a number of countries agree on something, even within the United Nations, that's a real struggle, and it takes years. It takes years. So I don't think we're going to see any such regulation anytime soon. And fun fact, actually, while preparing for this webinar, I actually took a glimpse at the website of World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO for short. And even they don't offer any specific solutions for metaverse, while you could think they should be those who actually propose things like that, because intellectual property in metaverse, that's the probably most the hottest topic, I'd say. If you look at the arbitration rules of WIPO, you will see that they don't differ from they're not different to any other arbitration rules in the world. If you take ICC, SCC, I don't know, ancestral rules, you name it, they're all the same. And even such an organization as the World Intellectual Property Organization, which pretends to be an institution which actually specializes in this field, they don't provide any useful solutions, any specific solutions for the metaverse or virtual reality.
But someone who do it will be really powerful in virtual reality, because it will be kind of empire of virtual reality.
Actually, I don't know, Thomas, if you know what you're talking about, because in fact it might be easier to do than expected. I'll give you an example.
I'm afraid.
Actually, we all should. I'll give you an example. It's not metaverse, but it's the power of internet, and it's the power of being the first. I'll give you an example. There is this, and as we have people from Mexico and Colombia and Latin America on this webinar, you might be familiar with it. There is this website called boxrec.com. It's a statistical portal which deals with boxing. And I don't want to be a bad prophet, and I don't suppose this might be as easy as in boxing in dispute resolution, but this is a very good example. Boxrec is a portal which was established by two people, a man and wife, an Englishman and a German woman, who are domiciled in the UK. They live in the UK. And they started gathering information on boxing records, on the results of fights throughout the world. No one really noticed. And no one actually bothered about it. But after a couple of years, after 10 years of their work, it turned out that that couple is probably the most powerful couple in the boxing world, because it turns out that they gathered so much information and people got used to using their portal and none other, that they're one of the biggest players in the world. Just the two people. And this is going back to what Tatiana said about this data protection and legal issues related to that. Boxrec is a private company owned by two people, and actually if you want to be a boxer, if you want to have your record recognized in the world, the result of your fight, you don't exist if you're not registered in Boxrec. You simply don't exist. And I just don't want Thomas to be right that this might happen in terms of dispute resolution somewhere, because maybe, just maybe, someone establishes a kind of virtual hub for dispute resolution. One person will use it, another person will use it, and in, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 8 years time, they will become the only one recognizable, and you will not be able to move them. That's a risk. That's a real risk, and I can see it very, very clearly if when talking about other aspects of being active in the internet. They started, the Boxrec people, they started this as a hobby, and now it's a huge business. And organizations like, coming back to Mexico again, the World Boxing Council and Mr. Suleiman, they would love to grab Boxrec. They would love to overpower them. They cannot. They really cannot. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Thomas is wrong, but it just might happen.
Thank you, Jarek. That's a very interesting topic, and I can see you like boxing. Okay, I have another question for you. Actually, it's from Ignacio Alamos, and he says, "Thank you very much for the presentation. He would appreciate if you could explain why the higher value than an FAT can reach artificially is a problem. The value of this type of asset is based precisely on speculation, the value that the market wants to give it. The same happens with a work of art that materializes in reality, such as sculpture or painting." Thank you.
Derek, I guess this is yours. It was your job.
Is it? Well, I have to say, I don't know the correct answer to that. Honestly, I do agree with the person who asked the question that it's based on speculation. And personally, I don't even understand how people can buy NFTs. As Tatiana said, there is no one definition of a NFT. There is no regulation what they represent. You can have NFTs created independently and legally for the same tangible asset. Honestly, if you ask me about the material regulation of NFTs, I can't say that I understand it well enough to answer that question. If it comes to dispute resolution, I'm your man. But if it comes to how it works, where the value comes from, what to do with it, and how to regulate it, I have absolutely no clue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we'll have time just for one more question. And one comment from Maria Luisa Mena. She's suggesting that identification issues could be solved by using self-sovereign identity through blockchain technology. I don't know if you agree. And another question maybe for you, Tatiana. Anna Seyer is asking if will space in the metaverse will be will be sold like actual real estate. I think it's already happening.
Yes, it is something already happening. So in the building, virtual show, virtual building, selling and renting for virtual money, for cryptocurrency and NTS and so on. It's something that we have already, and we are facing this already for some years from the blockchain technology. So it's not something completely new. What is the new in the interaction in the metaverse and the way how this interaction is happening. What was the first question? Sorry, Pablo.
It was a suggestion in order to resolve the identity issues in the metaverse by creating a self-identification.
Yes, of course. If everyone who interacting in the metaverse are lawful followers and diligent followers, we can solve it. But in this case, we don't need any regulation. We just have no problem if there is no speculation, if there is no illegal behavior in the metaverse. We need rules for the cases of illegal behavior, for illegal conduct in the metaverse, and this is the huge issue.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. And I think we could keep asking and talking about this because it's very passionate and because it's new and it is developing every day. So maybe we can in the future arrange another webinar or something. But thank you very much for joining us today to all participants. Thanks a lot, Tatiana Karavanova, Jarek Kolkowski, and Thomas Trokos. I am very honored to have you accepting this invitation and participating with us, providing your experience and your point of view for these important topics on arbitration.
Pablo, thank
Thank
very
you,
much
Pablo, for organizing
for
this. Thank you.
opportunity to discuss in this
Also,
very hot
thank you
topic.
to the Colegio de Corredores Públicos de Jalisco. I don't know, Karen, if you would like to say something else on behalf of Karen.
Well, I just wanna thank our panelists. It is truly a new topic to all of us, and it is very interesting. So thank you very much for taking your time and explaining this topic to us. And thank you also very much to all the participants. And we hope we can arrange a new panel to continue starting this subject. Thank you very much.